What's up, folks? Welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to get started with the OpenAI O1 preview and the OpenAI O1 mini models. I recently got developer access to these APIs, and I'm really excited to try it out and see what kind of capabilities you can get with these models. So let's get started. Now, folks, let's remember how to start these types of things, all right? So I'm going to open up a terminal here, which is where I can, perform commands on my Mac OS machine. And I already have a Conda virtual environment set up with the necessary packages. But in case you don't, it's very easy. The first things that you should set up in your own machine, Conda, which is essentially a package that allows you to manage virtual environments in your machine so that you can have isolated environments where you install the packages for particular projects. So you should run something like conda create -m, your environment, and then you can even set the Python version that's going to be running on that environment, like 3.11, which is the one that we're going to be using today. All right. After you've done that, you activate that environment by running conda activate your environment. And after you've done that, you're going to run pip install -u to install the latest version of the OpenAI package, right? Which then is going to give you access to that package in this particular environment. Now, after that, you're going to run pip install ipykernel, which is going to allow you to create a kernel so that you can use your Python code, you can use that Python environment in your Jupyter Notebook, whatever your Jupyter Notebook is. You can, in this case, I'm going to be using VS Code, and I'm going to be using this kernel to use the Jupyter Notebook on my VS Code. But if you have regular Jupyter Notebook, you can just say pip install Jupyter Notebook, and you should be good to go, and you can run it in your browser, right? So I am assuming a little bit of knowledge from your end, but if you're doing it like me, you can run pip install ipykernel, and then after that, you can do Python -m, and then there you go. You can do this command to set up your kernel, and then you can say your environment name right here. You run that, and that should give you access to the environment in Jupyter Notebook from within VS Code. Okay, so after we've done all of that, I can go to Control-Shift-P on VS Code, and then I can, which brings up the command palette. I can go to kernel, select notebook kernel, and then I can select my desired kernel, which is going to be this one for this particular video. All right, folks? Now, the other thing that we're going to be assuming is that you have an OpenAI API key, right? If you don't, go to the quick start blog post from OpenAI to get that set up. And after you've done that, in your notebook, you can write import OS, and then you can say import os.environment, which should have an API key like this, right? And this is setting the OpenAI API key as an environment variable for this particular session, right? Which is usually the approach when we're, when I'm sharing this notebook with someone, which is something that you would do. But if you want to, just like me, have it for any session that you want, you can go on your terminal and you can write export OpenAI API key, and then you set that to your API key, all right? And even better, if you want that forever set in your environment, you can open up your bashrc file or zshrc file with something like vim.zshrc, and then you're gonna write that export command with your API, OpenAI API key inside of this file so that every time that you use your terminal, you can have access to that API key. All right, folks? Which is like a basic thing to say, but a lot of you probably are beginners, so that's how you get that set up. Okay, folks? Now, we're going to be starting with a quick start with the OpenAI API to use the O1 preview and O1 mini models. So how we're going to do that? Pretty simple. What we're going to do is I'm going to start by importing the OpenAI module from the OpenAI package, and I'm going to set up my client, which is what I'm doing here. And this is going to give me access to all the stuff that I have access to my API key, okay? And now what we're going to do is we're going to send a simple prompt to the model. So I'm going to write here a prompt under a variable called prompt. And I'm going to say, tell me what is the most complex and interesting problem that you know. All right. So just a simple, silly prompt to get started. So I'm going to write completion equal to client dot beta dot chat dot completions dot parse. And now I'm going to set the model that I want, which is going to be the O1 preview model to start. And I'm going to set the messages parameter, which is going to contain the message to the model. And in this case, we're not going to be setting a system message because this model does not have that kind of capability to set its overall behavior. So I'm just going to set role user and then content my prompt, which is just sending my prompt to the model and retrieving a response. All right. And then we're going to print the completion that we get with this prompt. So now I'm going to send that to the model. We're going to wait a few seconds and then we're going to get a response. All right, folks. So we got a response after 30.4 seconds, which is quite a bit. But if you've read the blog post talking about this particular model, we're supposed to wait a little bit more and have more latency with this model due to its reflective and increased capabilities in terms of reasoning. And essentially what the model is doing is taking its time to reflect on the request that it was made so that it can provide a more higher quality response. So that's to be expected. Okay, folks, so now that we've seen this, what we're going to do is we're going to deconstruct this object that we got back so that we can actually look at the response that we want. So we're going to say completion.choices, and then we're going to access the first choice, and then we're going to access the message. And then from the message, what we're going to do is we're going to access the content of that message. Perfect. There we go. Now we have here the final prompt. But as you can see, it's not totally visible for you folks. So what I'm going to say is, I'm going to say string output is equal to this, okay? And now I'm going to import from IPython.display a capability to see things as markdown. I'm not 100% sure I have access to this. I should have access. Markdown. So let's see. Yep. And now we're going to visualize the markdown version of that string so that it looks a little bit better. There you go, folks. Okay, so that's a pretty cool answer from the model. We get one of the most complex, fascinating problems is the unification of general relativity in quantum mechanics into a theory of quantum gravity. All right, that's a pretty cool response. And not only the model returns a response, but it returns like a whole essay describing the nature of the problem. Why is the problem complex? Which is something I really like, because if we were talking to an academic, that's something that I would expect to get as a response. Even discussions about promising approaches to the problem. So that's a pretty great response and result, even with some references, pretty much an essay on the most interesting complex problem the model knows of. All right, that's great. This is wonderful. But folks, we're going to be testing this across some examples, okay? And the examples I want to do are just pretty basic, just so that we get started with this model. And I want to do summarization with the OpenAI O1 Preview O1 Mini model, and summarization for relatively large documents, okay? Then I want to do question answering, okay? And then, folks, to finish, I want to do summarization, question answering, and then I want to see potential use cases to help with structured outputs. Now, I could see a lot of examples, but these are the ones that I'm interested in, all right? I want to see how the model does against GPT-4o model for summarizing large documents with very simple, silly prompts. Then for generating and answering questions, while also providing the sources for the outputs. And then I want to take one step further and see how this model can be integrated with something called structured outputs, which for those of you who don't know what this means, I'll explain when it's time, but essentially structured outputs allows you to use models like GPT-4o, GPT-4o mini, or a few other large language models to extract from unstructured data structured objects that you can control and make the extraction with large language models more deterministic. All right, so let's start with summarization. All right, folks. So summarization. And for this example, we're just going to say our prompt for summarization is going to be prompt summarize is going to be very simple. We're just going to say, look, summarize the following content as well as you can. Whatever that means, all right? And then we're going to put here content, which is going to carry some content that we're going to have to create. And this is going to be an F string because we're going to transform, this is going to be a variable that's going to hold a string, and then we're going to add to this prompt and generate a response with the model. So for that, we're going to need two things. We're going to need to call the API, but we're also going to need to assign the content variable to something. So the content variable is going to be the contents of a PDF. Let's write the code to get all the contents from a specific PDF, and then let's import everything as a string, send to this model, and then get a summary first with the O1 preview model, then with the O1 mini model, and then with the GPT-4o model. All right, folks, that's what we're going to do. So for that, we're going to need to load the PDF. Okay, there are many ways to load a PDF. I think that the simplest way that I can think of is using a package called PyPDF, and then using the PDF reader inside PyPDF. There are many others. There's PyPDF2, and there are a lot of packages that do this, but I want something simple that works now, and I have the snippet that should work just as fine. So this snippet takes a file path as input and returns all the text from that PDF. All right, folks? So for that now, I only need, in order to run this function, a file path so that I can send to this function and then get all the contents from the PDF. In order to get that, we need some PDF. I have here in my current folder a PDF called paper.pdf. So we're gonna set up that file path and we're gonna load all the text from that file path. So we're gonna say load PDF text, and then we're gonna give the file path to that text. And we're going to print like the first, let's say 20,000 characters from that. Let's say the first 10,000 characters from that PDF. There you go. Okay, folks. So now that we have the text, we can actually start our summarization. Actually, I'm not going to call this text. I'm going to call this content. So content is equal to this. Perfect. And now, there you go. And now, folks, we can actually start our prompt. For that, I'm going to first leave this prompt summarize here. And I'm going to write a little function saying summarize. And this function is going to take in the content from the PDF. And let's actually just write a function called getResponse, which is just going to it's going to take in the prompt and return a response from the model. And now we can actually go back here. We can copy the API call that we used earlier. So this one right here, there you go. And we're going to come back here and we're going to place that in here. And we're going to say this, we're going to write a little simple description of what this function does. So returns the output of an API call to the OpenAI API. There you go. So returns the text output, okay? And we're gonna set the model like this. We're gonna set the messages like this, all perfect. But then we're gonna say return completion dot choices 0 dot message dot content. All right, folks. So this is going to be the function we're going to use for the three examples that we're going to test: the summarization, the question answering, and then the combination with And then we're going to use this plus some other magic to do the structured output stuff, all right? So now let's actually get our summary going. So I'm going to run this, and now we're going to say, okay, output summary is equal to get response, and then we're going to give the prompt summarize to this function. And then we're going to use that markdown that we imported earlier to visualize the summary. Okay, so let's see what we get, and let's run it. So the paper we're summarizing is called Data Interpreter, an LLM agent for data science, and essentially is a very interesting paper discussing this idea of using large language models as agents to enhance and automate data science related activities. So it's a pretty interesting paper, and let's keep that in mind when we're reading up the summary. So it's taking a while because it's a lot of text. All right, folks. So this is the summary that we got. We have the title of the paper, all the authors. Okay, that's pretty intense. And then we have the abstract of the paper, kind of neatly organized. The link related to where the solution is going to be released. That's interesting. Now, a super interesting summary of the introduction. That's pretty good. And the methodology in the paper. That's pretty nice. I really like this summary, actually. Yeah, this is a pretty awesome summary. And then conclusion, I mean, everything organized in bullet points so that you get a really high quality one-page summary with all the relevant stuff from the paper. I really like this. Let's validate a few things just to see if there's some hallucination going on. So data-centric scientific problems, task dependency, specialized domain. Data interpreter addresses these challenges by dynamic planning with hierarchical structure, tool utilization generation, enhancing reasoning with logic bug awareness. So let's take something like dynamic planning with hierarchical structures. And let's go to the paper and let's do Control F. And all I'm doing here is I'm going to be looking for the dynamic planning with hierarchical graph structures. That's pretty cool. All right, so it seems like we're on a good track with this summary. So I'm pretty happy with this result. All right, folks. So now the next challenge is to have a prompt to create questions and answers that encompass this entire paper. So what I'm going to say is I'm going to write a prompt here called prompt Q&A, all right? And I'm going to say write a set of questions with answers to test me on this paper. And I'm going to give it, just like I did before, the contents of the paper, all right? That's a pretty simple prompt, and that's what we're going to do. And now we're going to say, okay, output Q&A is equal to get response, and then we're going to give the prompt Q&A, and then again, we're going to say markdown, output Q&A. Now, notice, folks, that I'm not asking for anything in specific. I'm not asking for a specific number of questions. I'm not asking for anything, just a bunch of questions to test me on this paper. That's all. Let's see what kind of output that we get with this model. So I'm going to run this. And I just realized that I did not make this, folks, an F string, so that the model did not see the actual output content, which is under the variable content. So let's try that again, now with the proper F string. All right, folks, so now that we got our questions and answers for the paper using the model, and let's take a look. So introduction and motivation. What are the primary challenges that LLM-based agents face in data science scenarios identified by the authors? Primary challenges are data dependency, refined domain knowledge, rigorous logic requirements. Let's just do a quick primary challenges. So let's just say challenges. Okay, there you go. Challenges that remain to be addressed. However, data-centric scientific problems, including ML, data analysis, present unique challenge to be addressed. Okay. What are, which pose additional challenge, data dependence intensity, refined domain knowledge, and rigorous logic requirements. So let's say data dependency. Let's take a look. Data dependency. Okay, so here, there you go. However, several challenges arise. Data dependence intensity, refined domain knowledge, rigorous. Okay, that's perfect. That's pretty good. So now, second question. What is the data interpreter proposed, and what are its 3 pivotal techniques? So it's an agent designed to address challenges in data science, follows a plan code verify approach to fulfill human requirements by breaking down tasks, executing code, and verifying feedback. That's pretty great. 3 pivotal techniques are this, this, and that. Okay, that's pretty nice. I like it how the questions are divided by sections. So you have questions for the introduction, questions for the methodology, a couple of questions for the methodology, and then questions for experiments, questions for ablation studies and analysis. That's pretty nice. And then in the conclusion, what are key contributions to the paper? And then all of the correct options. And then critical thinking. That's very nice. That's a 6th section of our question answering system with critical thinking proposed suggested. That's really cool. That's one that really impressed me, folks. The fact that we have the model actually test our ability to see beyond what's in the paper and try to reflect on what it means outside of its own context. Love these outputs. I mean, I think that this model looks pretty impressive, okay? So in terms of summary, the summary was exceptional. In terms of question answering, was extremely good as well. And now what I want to do, folks, is this. Now, to finish up this video, which is already getting too long, so instead of doing like a full experimental analysis comparison with everything, what I want to do is just finish up by taking this output Q&A, okay? And what I'd like to do is, I'd like to, since this model, because folks, if you don't know, these models do not have the regular capabilities that the normal models like GPT-4o, GPT-4o mini models have, which is like they cannot be used in the assistance API, so as agents to perform tasks, and they cannot be used for structured outputs per se. However, my idea was, okay, so if this model generates higher quality questions about a paper, I can take its output and then feed that to another model with structured output capabilities to just pretty much do the task of translating the questions into a structured output format to help me if I want to put that into an app, or if I want to have some, if I want to have an app with some feedback and I want to control where the question is, where the answer is, et cetera, et cetera. So that's pretty easy to do, folks. What I would do is we're going to set up that using a combination of the OpenAI API with Pydantic, which is a data validation library that allows you to create these structured objects that help you interact with models like GPT-4o, etc., and give you the ability to transform unstructured data into these structured data types that you can manipulate more easily. So to get that going, all we have to do is, from Pydantic, we're going to import base model and something called field to control the fields for the attributes of our data type. And I'm going to say something like class Q&A, okay? And this class Q&A is going to inherit from the base model, all right? It's going to have true attributes, essentially. Let's say true attributes. Question Q&A, question Q&A. It's going to have the question, which is going to be essentially, I'm going to say question, which is going to be a string. And essentially, we're going to describe it as field description equals to the question, the question from the paper, maybe something like that. Question, let me just I'm going to cheat real quickly and I'm going to check on one thing, folks. Yep. There we go. That's what I wanted to see. All right, so I have to put this here and this one there. There you go. I always forget. And then answer is also a string, and we're gonna say description is equal to the answer to the question. That's it. That's pretty much what this thing's gonna do. And now, folks, we're gonna create another class called Q&A list, okay? Which is going to inherit from the base model as well. And this is going to be a essentially a list of Q&A questions. So I'm going to say questions is going to be a list of Q&A objects. And this list is essentially from the typing package, which is a built-in package in Python that allows us to create list objects, okay? And then answers is going to be the same thing. List of, questions is going to be the list of Q&As, and that's it, folks. That's all we're gonna get. The question is gonna be a list of Q&A objects. Each Q&A object is gonna contain a question and answer, and that's it. So now, folks, what we have to do is create a special API call to the ChatGPT API with this structure that we created to organize our questions and answers. So to do that, it's very easy. All we have to do is I'm gonna cheat here and put the snippet that I use usually for this kind of stuff. Response model, this is the old one. So let's just write it from scratch just once. So I'm gonna define a function here. It's gonna say get structured Q&A. And this is going to take in a prompt with questions, okay? And it's going to return the structured version of the question answering prompt. So to do that, we're gonna say, okay, completions is equal to client.beta.chat.complete completions.parse. I think that's how you get it. And now we have to put in a model that actually is compatible with structured outputs. So I'm going to put GPT-4o mini. We don't need the big GPT-4o for this task because this is a pretty simple task of just translating a format into another. And then from the messages, we're actually can now set up the system message for this particular model. So we're going to say, you are a Q&A structuring engine. You take in questions with answers. You take in strings. You take in a string with questions and answers. Let me just organize this a little bit better. Just sit like this. There you go. Questions and answers. Let me just put it all here with questions and answers. And you return a structured version of that using the format list of lists, perhaps. I guess we can say like a list of objects. Yeah, a list of and you return a structured version of that as a list of questions. I think that's enough. And now for the next one, we're going to say role, and then we're going to say user, and then we're going to say content. Oh, actually, I just realized I made a silly mistake here, folks. So this should be role system. And then now, for the next one, we're going to say row user content, rows in. Yeah, and now here we should say content. Now we're correct. So row user content. And now the content is going to be the prompt for the question. Perfect. And now, folks, when we return, we're going to say return completions dot. And now this one I always forget. I'm just going to return completions first, folks, and then I'm going to try to remember without checking to test my memory. Okay. Actually, we can actually just test this right now. We can just say get structured QA, and then the prompt is going to be just question, what is the capital of France? And then like something like answer Paris. And let's see if we get a structured version of that. So we're going to say output, and then we're going to say output. Okay, so output.choices. So output.choices, and then 0, and then message, and then content, I guess, but content would not be parsed. So we say parsed. And in this case, we did not get a parsed content, which is weird. And the actual output was like this. I don't like that at all. So let's see why that is. Client.beta.shadow.completions. That should work. Yeah, client.beta, then .parse. And it should have been, folks, we did not get because we did not specify the response format, right? So here is what we're missing. We're missing response format. And now I'm going to say Q&A list. And this should give me the response and the output that I'm expecting. So now I'm going to put this thing here. I'm going to send that out. And we should get an object here. There you go, folks. We get a list of questions with answers. So inside the list, we will have the Q&A object with the question attribute and the answer attribute. Perfect. So this is working perfectly. And now, folks, we can actually test. So remember, we have that output Q&A, okay, which is from here, which with all these amazing questions. And we're expecting to get, when we run with structured outputs, we're expecting to get 12 questions perfectly organized with that Q&A list object. So let's see if that's what we get. We're going to say output structured Q&A is equal to get structured Q&A, and we're going to send the output Q&A here. And then when we get that, let's actually already change this to return the correct output. So we're going to say .choices. Yeah, .choices, tarari, tarara. We're going to comment this out so that we don't run this again. We're going to run this. So now it has the correct structure. And now we're going to first see what is the output that we get, and then we're going to print it in an organized fashion. We got our response, and it's looking very good so far. But let's actually loop over all the questions in the output that we got. And let's see if we got what we wanted. So I'm going to say for QA in the questions list, I'm going to print the QA. And actually, it's output structured Q&A. So output structured Q&A. And we're going to print that out. I don't know why I'm getting a red line over here. Because I did not put in here. There you go. Okay, perfect. Let's see how many questions we got. How might they approach the experience? So we can count that out easily. We can just say for I in Q&A in enumerate output structured Q&A questions, and then we're going to print the index and the question. So we got, yes, folks, we got all the questions. We got 12 questions, which matches the number of questions we created with the OpenAI O1 preview model, which is perfect. And now all we have to do is print the question and the answer to make sure that we got everything nice and organized. So for that, it's pretty simple. We're going to use the same structure of printing. But here, instead of printing the question, we're going to say print Q&A.question. And then we're going to copy this and say print Q&A.answer. And then we're going to say print some separator like this. Okay, so now we run this and there you go. We get all the questions organized, which is very nice because we can use this in many different ways to, it helps us bring these capabilities to apps, to agents, to extraction pipelines, to a bunch of stuff. So it's pretty cool. So overall, folks, the OpenAI O1 preview models looks extremely impressive on tasks like summarization, question answering, and even it works super well combined with structured outputs using the regular GPT-4o or GPT-4o mini models to enhance the capabilities of those models by having a powerful model on the back end do something complex, and then these models just do something like structured output transformations and things like that. There are probably more interesting ways to explore this, but I think that as an introduction video, we covered quite a few interesting things. So thanks for watching, folks. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you next time. Cheers.